How's it going, y'all? Rafa the Pickleball Tech Dude here, and we have some breaking news to discuss. I was literally just working on Boomstick first impressions, and then I got about 15 questions about this exact article that was just written here. Oh wait, but where are my manners? Before we dive in, cue the dramatic intro. Cool. Just need to get that out of the way. All right. So the article in question is in Forbes magazine, written by Todd Boss, whose reporting I'm not usually a super big fan of, but this is an interesting case. So it's entitled Pickleball Pros Forming World Pickleball Players Association Advisory Group. And from what I garner, this is essentially the players' attempt to unionize. This is just going to be a short initial impressions of the important stuff after reading the article for the first time. If you want the full in-depth analysis, go and subscribe to Pickleball Tech Dude Reacts. It's my smaller channel, which is supposed to be dedicated to things like this. But let's start with who's involved. So apparently the WPPA's named board is Tina Pisnik as president, Deckel Barr as treasurer, Jesse Irvine as secretary, and includes board members Augie Guh, Colin Johns, Jay DeVilliers, and Gabe Tardio. Now, the article goes on to state that a few of these players, including the president, Tina Pisnik, were true to the UPA even throughout the tour wars, and also mentions the fact that Gabe Tardio's contract that he recently renewed was for $800K, which I'm pretty sure has been debunked. But regardless, this is an interesting board choice. What I think the article also goes on to point out well is that after the UPA Players Council was already selected, which it is right here, we've got Zane Navratil as president, along with Roscoe Bellamy, Brooke Buckner, Georgia Johnson, Elise Jones, Eric Onsen, Catherine Parento, Federico Staxrud, Annalie Waters, and Matt Wright as the board members there. Both boards notably are missing the number one men's player in the world, Ben Johns. There's a good call out here that Navratil was an incredibly outspoken critic of the PPA in the pre-Tour Wars era, so it's interesting that he was selected as president. But it goes on to state, it doesn't say necessarily who from the UPA made this statement, but it does say the UPA confirms that this committee is the only formally acknowledged and authorized voice of its athlete base. So clearly, this is going to stir some things up. I was curious about the motivation for the group's formation, and the article does state that the new group's interests are in include health and safety, along with transparency as it pertains to compensation. And that is typically how these things go. Whenever the players do decide to unionize, it's typically over contract conflicts. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it was really recent that the UPA sent out new contracts that were shifting players to a more prize purse related model as opposed to base salary model. Honestly, in my personal opinion, that is a move that is very much needed. I think that player contracts were definitely super inflated during the tour wars. And honestly, just looking from the outside in on the state of those contracts, it was very difficult for me to understand how these tours could continue to operate and operate profitably with the number of high-level contracts that they gave out. There are really only three issues that, just from my initial reaction, I could see coming up during the negotiations. One of them is addressed here, which is that a non-contracted pro who wins a Grand Slam doubles title would get just $3,000 prize money, while a full member PPA player would get $45K for the same win. So I do think that that is a super large disparity, especially if you're a non-contracted pro trying to make your way into being a contracted pro. $3K just isn't quite going to cut it in terms of costs for the traveling required to reach top 20 status in order to try and upgrade your salary level. So I do think that there's a problem there. But the other two would be obviously the health insurance aspect. I think that that is part of the reason why the group was created in terms of health and safety. Startups and small companies aren't necessarily the best with providing good health insurance plans, which isn't great when your employees literally rely on their body for work. So hopefully that is something that's coming up. And the third thing is that the UPA in general doesn't necessarily have a strong track record with paying out players on time for the contracts they already had pre-tour wars. So there's no rapport there. And so switching to a prize purse based model could provide some PTSD to some players that weren't getting paid in the past. And so provide some concern. I would definitely be concerned as a player that I was going to get paid in a timely manner. So I'm sure that some of those are factoring in, but I'll have to confirm later. Apparently, the new PPA is being advised by the same group, Sports Solidarity, who helped minor league baseball players unionize, and the support of the Professional Tennis Players Association, an organization that pursues similar goals for touring tennis players. So it's good that this group that is apparently advising the WPPA at least has some sort of experience in the world of negotiating for the unionization of racket sports players. So I'm not sure how much that experience helps, but again, something else I'll have to investigate. And it's funny, the last thing the article says is, one thing seems sure, we're heading into another interesting chapter in the growth of the professional side of the sport. What growth? That's my question. I don't think I'm seeing any growth at all. If anything, we are moving backwards, back into the drama, back into players being unhappy, back into, the leading organizations clearly not satisfying the minimum needs that are required for these players moving forward. I think the only movement forward has been us moving away from the super high player contracts. I really do think in the long run it is going to kill pro pickleball faster than anything else. So hopefully there is a middle ground that can be met and quickly between the WPPA and the Players Council for UPA, where I'm sure most of the negotiations will be happening. But yeah, I don't see any growth of the sport so far. I don't see how we can grow until we move past this and can make it at least 6 months without some major drama unfolding. So again, if you want to hear the full analysis and everything that I discover, which I will post a full video later this week, head over and subscribe to Pickleball Tech Dude Reacts. I have a YouTube as well as Instagram account where I'll post as soon as that video goes live. But with all that said, if you guys enjoyed the video or learned something, I will link the article down below so you can read it in full. And I hope you all stay happy and healthy. And of course, out on the courts until the next video, which will be a recap of everything I can tell you about the new Selkirk Project Boomstick. Peace.